No one wanted to touch the alien girl. She sat on the cold steel floor of the spaceport, knees drawn to her chest, a tangle of matted hair falling over glowing eyes dimmed with exhaustion. Her skin was caked in grime, streaked with dried blood and dirt. People passed by in hurried steps, their noses wrinkling at her smell, their gazes darting away as though she might infect them with whatever filth clung to her. Contaminated, someone muttered. Should have been quarantined, spat another. The guards didn't intervene. They never did. To them, she was just another refugee, another unwanted reminder of a war no one wanted to remember. But I couldn't look away. She didn't flinch when the boot of a passing trader kicked over her tin cup, scattering the few credits she'd begged for all day. She just stared blankly ahead, lips cracked, hands trembling with cold. Something in me broke. Maybe it was her size, too small for this cruel world. Or maybe it was the memory of my sister's face before the fever took her. Whatever it was, I took a step forward, and when everyone recoiled in disgust, I reached out my hand. Rain slicked the cracked streets outside Port Halen, turning the neon glow of shop fronts into blurred smears of color. The air smelled of ozone and rot. Refugees huddled under awnings, trying to stay dry, their hollow eyes tracking passers-by for a hint of kindness. There wasn't much of that left in this city. I tugged my hood lower as I left the clinic, shoulders aching from 12 hours of patching up miners and drunks. The crowds pressed in, humans, hybrids, a few sanctioned aliens, but I kept my head down. You didn't make eye contact here, unless you were looking for trouble. That's when I saw her. She was curled up at the base of a vending unit, a ragged blanket barely covering her skeletal frame. Hair like ash clung to her face in damp strands. From under the mess, 2 eyes flickered faintly golden, but dulled like dying embers. I almost walked past. Almost. But then a trader kicked over her tin cup. Coins clattered across the tiles. She didn't scramble to gather them. She didn't even flinch. Pathetic, the man muttered as he stepped around her. I stopped. Don't, my brain whispered. Keep walking. She's not your problem. But my feet betrayed me. Hey, I said softly, crouching down. Rainwater pooled around my boots. She didn't look up. You hungry? Nothing. I've got a place nearby. Warm. Food. A shower. Her cracked lips parted, and for a moment I thought she'd speak, but her shoulders just hunched tighter. I sighed, reaching out my hand. She stared at it like it was a weapon. Your choice, I said. But if you stay here tonight, they'll come for you in the morning. For the first time, her eyes lifted to meet mine. There was no trust in them, only fear and bone-deep exhaustion. But then, with trembling fingers, she reached back. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the streets still glistened like oil-slick glass under the flickering lights of Port Halen. Steam hissed from vents. Somewhere nearby, a siren wailed, then cut off abruptly. I should have gone home. I'd earned my rest after stitching up half the district's lowlifes and addicts. But my boots wouldn't carry me past her. She was smaller up close, fragile in a way that made my chest tighten. Her knees were drawn tight against her chest, her thin arms wrapped around them like a shield. Dirt clung to her skin in thick patches, and her clothes, if you could call them that, were little more than rags. Don't stop. The voice in my head tried again. She's alien. She's dangerous. Don't make her your problem. But I couldn't move. A couple walked past, giving her a wide berth. The woman whispered to her partner, loud enough for me to hear. Filthy little thing. Probably diseased. The man grunted. They should have culled her kind after the war. The girl didn't flinch, didn't even react. She just kept staring at the wet ground as though the world around her had already ceased to exist. I crouched a few feet away. Rainwater soaked through my pants, chilling my knees, but I didn't care. Hey! My voice came out softer than I intended. No response. You okay? I tried again. Still nothing. Her hands were shaking violently. From cold, hunger, or fear. I couldn't tell. Maybe all three. I glanced at the tin cup near her bare feet. A few coins sat at the bottom, rain pooling on top of them. Someone had scrawled something on the cup's side in crude ink. Contaminated. My jaw tightened. You're not contaminated, I said gently. You're just cold. Huh? Her eyes flicked up for the briefest moment, golden, glowing faintly even in her exhaustion. Then they darted back down. Listen, I exhaled slowly, trying not to spook her. I've got a place. It's not much, but it's warm. You can get some food, a shower. No answer. I rubbed a hand over my face. I wasn't good at this. Helping people was my job at the clinic, but out here, kindness felt dangerous. Footsteps splashed through puddles behind me. I turned slightly to see two security officers approaching, rifles slung across their chests. Their armor was marked with the bold insignia of the Interplanetary Authority. Protectors in name only. One of them gestured at the girl with a tilt of his chin. You. Alien. Move along. She didn't. Couldn't. The second officer snorted. Figures. They always play dead till you drag them out. I rose halfway, my body blocking their view of her. She's not causing trouble, I said evenly. The first officer raised an eyebrow. And you are? Just a medic. She's sick. I'll take her. The second one laughed. Your funeral. Document don't come crying to us when she infects your whole block. They moved on, muttering something about bleeding heart humans as they disappeared into the fog. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. See, I said quietly, crouching again. Not safe out here. Come with me. I promise I won't hurt you. She finally moved. A shiver ran through her thin frame. Slowly, painfully, she unfolded her arms, her fingers stiff like they hadn't been used in days. When she tried to stand, her legs gave out. I caught her before she hit the ground. She weighed almost nothing. Easy, I murmured. We'll go slow. As I guided her down the street, people stared. Some recoiled as if I were carrying a plague rat. Others shook their heads in disgust. Unbelievable. One man said. She'll get you killed, hissed a woman clutching her child. I ignored them. The girl stumbled, but kept her small hand wrapped tightly around my sleeve. She didn't speak. Not a word. But when I glanced down, I saw something shift in her golden eyes. Not trust. Not yet. But a flicker. A fragile ember, refusing to go out. And, for reasons I didn't fully understand, I felt a fierce need to protect it. The trek back to my apartment felt longer than usual. The girl clung to my sleeve like it was the only solid thing in her universe. Her bare feet slapped weakly against the wet pavement, each step a small victory. She didn't make a sound. Not even when we passed clusters of people huddled under flickering street lamps, their voices dropping to hushed whispers as they noticed her. Why is he touching one of them? He's asking for trouble. She's probably diseased. The words slid off me, but I could feel the weight of their stares. I pulled my coat tighter around her small frame. The fabric was damp from the rain and from her shivering, but it was all I had. Not far now, I said, though I doubted she understood. Her kind, what little I knew of them, spoke a language of melodic tones and clicks. Still, I hoped the sound of my voice might offer some comfort. She stumbled. I caught her again. Her skin was ice cold, and her fingers felt brittle, as though they might snap if I squeezed too hard. Easy, I murmured. Just a little longer. By the time we reached my building, my shoulders were tense from expecting a confrontation, but the lobby was mercifully empty. I ushered her into the creaking lift and pressed the button for the 6th floor. The girl pressed herself into the corner, her eyes darting between me and the walls as if expecting them to close in. The faint glow in her irises seemed a little brighter now. Was it the light or a sign she was regaining strength? When the doors opened, I led her down a narrow hallway that smelled faintly of damp concrete and old noodles. I unlocked my door, kicking aside a stack of empty meal packets as we entered. "It's not much," I said, "but it's warm and safe." She didn't react. She just stood there, staring at the peeling paint on the walls, the flickering bulb overhead, the cluttered counters. "Sit." I gestured to the couch. She obeyed mechanically, perching on the edge like she was afraid of leaving dirt behind. I grabbed a blanket from the closet and draped it over her shoulders. She flinched, but didn't pull away. "You're soaked through." I crouched in front of her. Do you know how to shower?" Blank stare. "Right. Probably not." I stood and pointed down the short hallway. "Bathroom. Warm water. It'll help." She hesitated. Then slowly, she rose and shuffled toward the door. When she disappeared inside, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I didn't even know her name, yet my chest ached as though I'd pulled my sister out of that alley. The sound of running water filled the apartment. I busied myself heating up a sealed ration pack, but my thoughts kept circling back to her. What if she panicked? What if she didn't know how to turn it off? What if? The bathroom door creaked open. I turned and froze. She stood there, wearing one of my old shirts that hung off her tiny frame like a dress. Her hair, now clean, was silver white and fell in soft waves around her face. The grime was gone, revealing pale, opalescent skin marked with faint glowing lines that traced intricate patterns down her arms and neck, like bioluminescent tattoos. She looked alien, ethereal, beautiful in a way that made my chest tighten. But she was also trembling, her golden eyes wide and fearful, as though waiting for me to scream or shove her out the door. I caught myself before finishing. "You're one of them. One of the Lemurians, once revered as healers, now hunted to near extinction. You're safe here," I said instead, forcing my voice steady. "No one's going to hurt you." She blinked at me. Then, in a whisper so soft I barely caught it, she said her first word. "Siley." I stared. "Your name?" She nodded faintly. I knelt, meeting her eye level. "Siley, I'm Corin. It's nice to meet you." Her lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but something close. For the first time, I saw a flicker of life in her eyes. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the heater and the faint hiss of rain against the window. Siley sat curled up on the couch, her knees drawn to her chest, my oversized shirt swallowing her tiny frame. The glowing lines on her skin had dimmed to a soft pulse, like the heartbeat of a sleeping creature. I placed a steaming bowl of soup on the table and nudged it toward her. "Eat," I said gently. "It's not much, but it'll help." She eyed the bowl warily. Slowly, her delicate fingers reached for the spoon. She held it awkwardly, as though unsure how to use it, then dipped it into the broth. The first sip made her flinch, probably too hot, but then she took another and another, until the spoon clinked against the empty bowl. I tried not to stare, but I couldn't help it. Cleaned up, she looked otherworldly. Her silver-white hair caught the dim light like strands of silk. The luminous markings on her skin shifted faintly with her breath, forming patterns I couldn't decipher. "You're Lemurian, aren't you?" I asked softly. Her spoon froze midair. Her golden eyes flicked up to meet mine. I raised my hands in surrender. "I'm not going to turn you in." She stared a moment longer, then lowered her gaze and shook her head. "Not Lemurian," she whispered. Her voice was fragile, barely more than a breath. "Then what?" I pressed gently. "Lost." The word hit me harder than I expected. "Yeah," I murmured. I know the feeling. I leaned back, rubbing at the ache in my neck. I'd heard stories of the Lemurians during med school. Once hailed as healers and scholars, their planet had been glassed during the war. Survivors were branded as carriers of a genetic plague, a convenient excuse for genocide. But looking at Siley, I didn't see a plague. I saw a scared child trying to make herself invisible. Hours passed. She didn't speak again, but I caught her glancing at me when she thought I wasn't looking. There was no malice in her gaze, only caution and something softer. When the news feed lit up on my comm screen, I nearly dropped my mug. Wanted, alien fugitive. Reward, 50,000 credits. The hollow projection showed an image of a young alien female with luminous markings. The resemblance to Siley was uncanny. My chest tightened. I turned the screen off before she could see. "You can stay here," I said. Her head jerked up in surprise. "For now," I added quickly. "But we'll need to figure something out. The city isn't safe." She hesitated, then whispered, "Why? Why what? Why help?" I stared at her. Why indeed? Because I couldn't save my sister. Because I'd seen too much death and couldn't stomach adding hers to the tally. Because, damn it, she reminded me of the child I used to be, alone and terrified in a world too big to care. Because someone has to, I said finally, and no one else will. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached out with trembling fingers and touched my hand, so light I barely felt it. "Thank you," she whispered. That night, I gave her the bed and took the couch. I lay staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her breathing from the other room. She was a fugitive. Harboring her could get me executed. But as I pictured her glowing eyes and fragile frame, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let anyone take her. The morning came gray and heavy. The rain outside reduced to a steady patter on the window pane. I sat on the couch, cradling a cup of synth coffee that had long gone cold. I hadn't slept. Every sound from the hallway made my chest tighten. In the bedroom, Siley slept curled up under the blanket, her glowing patterns dim like fading embers. She looked peaceful, so heartbreakingly fragile, I wanted to believe no one would hurt her. But I wasn't naive. The Interplanetary Authority didn't care about peace. They cared about control, and harboring an alien fugitive was a capital offense. The sharp clang of boots in the hallway snapped me upright. Voices. 6th floor. Anonymous tip. Male medic. My blood turned to ice. They were here. I crossed the room in 3 long strides and nudged Siley awake. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to fear as I whispered, "We have to go. Now." She sat up too quickly, swaying with dizziness. I grabbed my coat and shoved it into her hands. "Put this on. Keep your hood up. Don't speak." A heavy knock rattled the apartment door. "Open up. Interplanetary Authority." Siley froze. I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. "Do you trust me?" Her golden eyes searched mine. Then she nodded. "Good. Then move." The fire escape. It was the only way. I led her to the window and shoved it open, the chill morning air biting at our skin. "Climb down carefully," I whispered. "Don't look back." She hesitated, her small hands gripping the rusty railing. A loud crash from the door behind us made her flinch. "They're breaking in," I hissed. "Go." She swung her leg over and started down. I followed, my heart pounding as voices echoed from my apartment. "Search every room. He's hiding her." We hit the alley below just as the apartment door burst open upstairs. "This way." I grabbed Siley's hand and pulled her into the narrow back streets, weaving through garbage bins and dripping drain pipes. Every shadow felt like an enemy, every sound a threat. We ducked into an abandoned maintenance shed and pressed ourselves against the wall, chests heaving. Sci-Li was shaking violently, not just from the cold, but from sheer terror. "I'm sorry," I murmured. "I shouldn't have brought you there." She looked at me with wide, tear-filled eyes. "They kill me." The lump in my throat nearly choked me. "Not if I can help it," I said fiercely. "I'll get you out of the city. Somewhere safe." Her small hand found mine, gripping it with surprising strength. "Corin, stay." It wasn't a question about the plan. It was a plea for safety, for trust, for something I wasn't sure I could promise. But I squeezed her hand back anyway. "I'm not leaving you." Outside, the sound of boots and drones grew fainter, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they cast a wider net. She wasn't just a refugee anymore. She was the most wanted being in Port Halen. And now, so was I. We couldn't go back. Not to my apartment, not to my old life. As I looked down at Sci-Li, her luminous markings faintly glowing again in the dim shed, I realized I'd crossed a line there was no returning from. Protecting her wasn't just a choice anymore. It was a fight for both our lives. The maintenance shed smelled of rust and damp earth. It was barely large enough for the two of us to sit without brushing against cold metal walls. Outside, the city murmured like a restless beast, distant sirens, the hum of drones, voices barking orders. I checked my wristcom again. The network was jammed in our sector. Typical authority tactic to flush out fugitives. We had maybe an hour before they swept the alleys. "We can't stay here," I said, keeping my voice low. "There's an old freight tunnel under the east docks. If we can reach it, we might be able to slip out before they lock down the perimeter." Sci-Li hugged her knees, her golden eyes wide. She didn't speak, but I could tell she understood. "You'll need to keep your hood up the whole way," I continued. "Stay close to me. If we're stopped—" I trailed off, unwilling to finish the thought. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the coat I'd given her. "Scared," she whispered. I looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't just scared. She was exhausted, fragile, and yet somehow still holding on. "So am I admitted. The corners of her lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but it was something. We sat in silence for a few minutes. The weight of everything, her fear, my guilt, the growing certainty that I'd doomed us both, pressed down like a physical force. "You should eat," I said finally, pulling a ration bar from my pack and breaking it in half. She took the piece with tentative fingers. Her hands were so small, the faint bioluminescent lines tracing down her wrists like veins of light. "Why help me?" she asked again, voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, because once someone helped me, I said, and I didn't deserve it either. It wasn't the whole truth, not even close, but it was all I could give her right now. Her golden eyes studied me for a long moment. Then, shyly, she reached out and touched my arm. "Corin, good." I felt something tighten in my chest. She said my name like it was a sacred word. The sound of boots clanging against metal snapped us both to attention. They were getting closer. I peeked out through a crack in the shed door. 2 authority enforcers in black armor passed by, their rifles slung casually, but their scanners active. "Time to move," I whispered. Sci-Li nodded, pulling the hood up over her silver hair. Her glowing markings dimmed almost to nothing. An instinctive attempt to hide, I realized. We slipped out the back, keeping to the shadows. The rain had stopped, but the streets were slick and glistening under neon lights. I led her through side alleys, my heart pounding every time a drone buzzed overhead. Halfway to the docks, a patrol rounded the corner ahead of us. "Stay calm," I murmured, pulling Sci-Li close. I ducked into a recessed doorway, pressing her against my chest as we waited. I could feel her trembling. Her breath was warm against my neck, rapid and uneven. "It's okay," I whispered. "I've got you." Her fingers clutched at my shirt. The patrol passed without noticing us, but I didn't move right away. In that quiet moment, with her heartbeat drumming fast against mine, something unspoken settled between us. Not romance, not yet, but a fragile trust, forged in desperation. When I finally pulled back, I caught the faintest shimmer of tears in her eyes. "Safe," she whispered. "For now," I said. But we both knew how fragile that promise was. We reached the edge of the docks as the first streaks of dawn painted the sky. The entrance to the freight tunnel loomed ahead, an old service hatch half hidden behind crates. "This is it," I told her. "Once we're through, they'll have a harder time finding us." She nodded, gripping my hand tightly. As we slipped inside the tunnel and the hatch closed behind us, I realized we'd crossed another invisible line. There was no going back. Not for her, not for me.